Thanks for being here this morning. I'll ramble for just a minute while you do all your microphone checks and really explain to you why we're here today. So after the court's decision late Friday afternoon, numerous people from the media had contacted us for interviews, and I really didn't want to do any interviews until the legislature had met this week. So we didn't do any interviews. We had one little written statement, and we've had a lot of contact, obviously this week, people wanting interviews, and we said, let's just do it all at once. And so everybody has an equal opportunity to really ask the questions that you want to ask, and we'll explain what we know. So that's why we're here today. So I don't have any earth-shaking announcements, but we wanted everybody to be treated fairly, and so we wanted to do all of this really collectively. It's an interesting time, certainly, for us, not only in the Shawnee Mission School District, but also in the state of Kansas. So here's what we believe to be true currently. All of you are familiar with the decision of the court from this last Friday. We've been spending a lot of time with counsel looking at the decision of the court and what it really means. Also, we were watching with great interest what action the legislature may or may not take this week. And as you know, the legislature did adjourn yesterday without taking action. So what does that mean for us? We don't know. We are fully planning being operational July 1st, and we are fully planning for school to start on August the 12th. I will reiterate to you that in the history of our great country, there has never been the delay to the start of a school year by any type of action from a court or from a legislature. So if there's some type of action from the court in Kansas, which has not occurred, I want to make it very clear, there is not an order at this point ordering anything from the court. But never in the history of our country has there been a delay or shutdown of the start of the school year in any state in our union. So we are in the full planning mode for everything that occurs this summer. You can see some of that is occurring at this site. So in just a few minutes, you're going to see dozens of students that are going to come in and they're going to have lunch here. That's a part of a program through the United States Department of Agriculture. One of the questions that we have, and again, I'm going to reiterate, there are so many questions that are left to be unanswered. And so let's just talk about some of those. One, what happens from here? There are several things that could happen. Will we have a special session of the legislature? Obviously in Shawnee Mission, we don't know the answer to that question. If there is not a special session of the legislature, will other action be taken? What's really taking place in the office of the governor and those decision makers? We don't know the answer to that question. So every day, we'll look forward to great anticipation of any news that might come out in relation to what will be the remedy, if any type of remedy, with the opinion of the Kansas Supreme Court. So we don't know the answers. We are, again, fully expecting to have full operations all summer long and certainly start the school year on time. There are some questions that need to be answered at some point in time if we continue down this road. And I mentioned the United States Department of Agriculture Food Service Program. We have a number of federal mandates. Those federal mandates, can they be precluded by a state court? That's one of the questions that somebody is going to have to answer at some point in time. That's a separate legal argument, but that's a very significant question. So we have the United States Department of Agriculture Food Service Program. We provide services 12 months a year under the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act, which is federal law. Those services, again, take place throughout the course of the summer. We call that ESY, or extended school year. So those federal mandates, if there is any type of order in relation to schools being operational, does that impact just state services? How does it impact the federal services? Those are all questions really that are yet to be answered. So as we go through the process, we're developing a long list of questions on the what ifs. I want to make it very clear the current situation in relation to school funding, this argument, fight, if you will, is about approximately 1% of the current state educational budget. This argument in relation to the equity of the LOB is about a shifting of the tax burden. There is not any additional money for public education in relation to the current argument in relation to equity. Again, it is money that would be provided for a shifting of the tax burden in the state. That's the conversation about equity which we're having currently. Also want to make it very clear there's a difference between equity, equalization, and adequacy, and that's commonly confused. The current conversation is not about the appropriate level of funding for public education in Kansas. That's adequacy. Adequacy, we believe, will be heard by the Kansas Supreme Court sometime within the next year. One of the questions that we have is in relation to how can you define equity when you have yet to define adequacy, because they are so interrelated. So I'm going to reiterate the point. The level of funding, how much money flows to public education, that is not what this fight is about. That discussion is going to take place at a later time in front of the Kansas Supreme Court. This is simply about equity, which is a shifting of the tax burden. So if the legislature would go back to the old funding mechanism, we call it 81.2 for the funding of the LOB, that's not additional money that would flow into school districts because it doesn't change the spending authority. It is simply a shifting of the tax burden from patrons of one school district to another school district. So key issues for us. We're planning on being fully operational. We're not making contingency plans. We believe that we'll be fully operational. We have a lot of questions in relation to the federal mandates that we have. That's a very, very significant issue. So again, as you walk through the door today, you saw the sign for the lunch program, U.S. Department of Agriculture. So we have a responsibility as a school district and administrators to be able to fulfill our duties to our students. In relation to the questions that haven't been answered, I'm really asking for leadership from our governor's office to our legislature so that everybody can come together, because I think everybody honestly has accountability for this. We cannot agree in the education community. School districts across the state cannot agree on the remedy. So everybody has responsibility for the situation that we're in, but the most important factor, we have a duty, we have a responsibility to the children of our state. We have to solve the problem. And if we can't solve the problem, it can't be resolved. But that's what we've been charged to do, every one of us. I do not believe you can point fingers at one entity. We're all in this together. I'm going to give you an example. The education community hasn't presented a solution. We can't agree on that solution. So everybody has a responsibility. So what do? Again, I'm going to reiterate one more time, full planning mode. We're not planning for any shutdown. We're not planning for any diminishing of services to our students. We have a lot of questions. And Shawnee Mission, probably like a lot of school districts, are working diligently with legal counsel, asking questions of the Kansas State Department of Education and others. What does this mean? We simply don't know at this point in time what it means. I would expect a lot to transpire over the next couple of weeks. I will not speculate on what that looks like because I don't have any idea. But I would certainly hope, again, that we would have direction and leadership from our governor's office that would establish a path so that some type of solution could occur over the next couple of weeks that would get us into the next phase of the school finance discussion, and that's in relation to adequacy. I know you have a lot of questions, so I'm going to pause right there. We can start those questions. I'll tell you what I know or what I believe to be true, and certainly, again, a lot of things we simply don't know.
Jim, do you believe that the Johnson County districts are being asked to, in effect, pay the freight for lower income districts throughout the state? Is that none of it?
Looking at the decision of the court, so the question is in relation to Johnson County and the rest of the state and that shifting of the tax burden. The question in relation to equity and equalization hasn't been defined. Our Kansas Department of Education has not defined equity. We don't know what it means. And a question that I have is equity paramount to equalization? So let's define equalization. So equalization, let's say, is based on your, and I'm going to try not to get too technical, but it's based on your assessed valuation, the ability of the local community to tax themselves to raise X amount of money. So in Shawnee Mission, our assessed valuation is the highest in the state of Kansas. But we have a spending authority. We are limited by the state in the amount of local tax revenue that we can raise because of the wealth factor, and that's the assessed valuation per pupil. So our last calculation of the 286 school districts in the state, we expended per pupil 286. 286 is the bottom. We were at 268 because of that mechanism called spending authority. My answer is, should we have a mechanism that based on your ability to raise taxes, the state's going to supplement you locally because of your lack of wealth? And I think the answer is yes. But that's equalization. Equity is in relation to what's the appropriate level of spending. Again, keep adequacy to the side, but in relation to equity, based on your income level. So because Shawnee Mission has the highest assessed valuation, does that mean that we should spend, as required by the state, only 268 out of 286? Is that equitable? I'm going to throw out something else for you to think about. So in our state, we have our special education formula, which includes gifted education. We provide services for students that need remediation, need tutoring and other things. But in relation to the equity component of school finance formula that we're discussing, what does that mean in relation to students that might have opportunities that other students don't have? So I'm going to try to answer your question now, Michael. We have to define equity. As testified again by KSDE, equity has not been defined by the State Department. And we're trying to litigate something that should have been defined by the educational leaders of the state. It's on our back. Adequacy. What's the appropriate level of funding for students in the state? We need to have our sights really high. That we're not getting by with funding, but we want to shoot for the stars. That's what our kids deserve, every student in the state. That's the adequacy component. We're not even having that conversation. So we need the definition of equity, we need the definition of adequacy, and that's the starting point for us to really have the discussion of what school funding looks like in Kansas.
And as part of this, the situation where the LOB has been warped into something that was not intended to be.
You know, I don't know if the LOB has really morphed into something it wasn't intended to be, but I would answer the question with this. Understand, we have been litigating school finance in Kansas for decades now. For decades. The formula that we talk about from 1992 was brought about by litigation. So it's been going on for a very long period of time. As adults, as leaders, that needs to stop. We need to come together in a consensus, all the political interest aside, as difficult as that might be, and do what's best for our kids. Because if we don't, we will continue to litigate school finance for decades yet ahead. No one wins from that. No one really wins. So that's the equalization component.
Dr. just to follow up for a second, I want to go back to that. Has the LOB been morphed into something that it wasn't intended? Because I didn't have an answer to this.
I'm going to go back to the Kansas Division of Legislative Research report from July 15 of 2015. The school finance formula that was put in place in 1992 has been changed every single year since 1992. So obviously something hasn't worked effectively, or it's been deemed that changes need to be made. One of the components that has to be examined is in relation to the LOB, but it's also in relation to the equalization. Why do we have a new facilities weighting? Why do we equalize capital outlay? Why do we equalize bond and interest? Why do we pay for things over and over again? So I don't know if it's morphed into something that it wasn't intended to do, but I think that has to be a part of the global conversation. Jay?
So real quick, 2 years ago or a year and a half ago when the governor said, hey, we need a timeout in the school finance wars, let's pass this block grant bill so we can have time to create a new school finance formula. Almost no progress has been made on that. Are you disappointed with the level of where those discussions have gone since the block grant bill was passed?
The question is in relation to what I'm going to deem a lack of a transparent plan for creating a new school finance formula. My belief is that the goal was to give all of us time to carefully craft a school finance formula. To my knowledge, not much, if any, action has really occurred in that regard. So one of the points that I'm going to make today, we need a very clear path to create a new school finance formula. And that needs to be a very transparent plan. Understanding not everyone's going to agree, that's okay. But we need to have these conversations, and they should have been occurring long before now. So my frank answer to your question is, I am disappointed that we do not have a very clear path for a new school finance formula, and now we're in this situation.
Dr. Hinson, if the Supreme Court shuts off your ability to spend money in 2017, in FY17, or collect money, how are you going to pay for the operations on July 1st and beyond?
We don't know the answer to the question. How do we move forward? So one of the things that we've looked for and again, we don't have an order from the court. There isn't an order from the court that you're going to have to, you can no longer encumber funds, you can't collect local taxes. If we get to that point, and it will be unfortunate if we get to that point, but if we get to that point, the court would have to be very specific in relation to what will and will not happen. But again, we also have the federal considerations, which play a significant role in this part. So if we get to the point of the court issuing an order, which will be an unfortunate position, the court would have to be very specific in relation to what could and what would not occur. Certainly we would need guidance from the Kansas State Department of Education as well, and then you have other state officials that would have to be involved in the process.
But you said quite clearly that you're going to be operating on July 1st, so where's that money going to come from?
We have the money currently in our budget, so we've encumbered expenditures. And that's a part of the question in relation to what can and can't happen. So when a locally elected body has already encumbered money, at that point in time, it's already been collected, it's already been encumbered. At what point in time can any orders from the state be issued to circumvent a locally elected body's authority? And that's an order that the court would have to order if they so desire. We don't anticipate that's going to occur. So let me go back to this point. Ladies and gentlemen, we're having a conversation about what's going to happen on June 30 in the state of Kansas. It is unfortunate that we're in this position. We have a couple of weeks yet to solve it, and it needs to be solved or resolved. That resolution can be a short-term fix. The bigger question is really yet ahead, though. That bigger question is in relation to adequacy. Because again, adequacy, that target's also going to impact equity and what that looks like. Sir?
What gives you confidence enough to say we don't need a contingency plan? What makes you think that you won't need one?
Two reasons. One, now don't laugh out loud at this but I still believe that our elected officials are going to find a way to resolve the issue before June 30. And the elected officials have to find a way to do that. And obviously, the court's going to have to see that that's fit in some form or fashion. I don't think in our state we're going to allow this to occur. Maybe that's Pollyanna. I hope not. We hoped other things would take place. The problem is we're at a point in time, we have a significant issue. We've allowed this to happen. We now need to change it, and we need to change it immediately. Yes, ma'am?
As a school district, do you just have to sit and wait now? And what do you tell parents and students? Just sit and wait, hope for the best?
It's the message that we sent out to them today, that we're in the full planning mode to move forward. Again, I will reiterate, there hasn't been a school system from a statewide perspective ever shut down in the history of our country. I don't think it's going to happen here. We in the state of Kansas don't want to go on record as that occurring for the first time ever in the history of our country here. So we need to solve it first. So our message to parents, we're planning on fully being in session. We're providing services to your students over the summer, and we're moving forward.
Jim, you have repeatedly said that you don't think that there's going to be a shutdown and you think it's going to get resolved. What are you hearing from your patriots? Are they worried? I mean, clearly, some of them must be, or you wouldn't come out and say this the way you're saying it today.
We've heard far more from our employees expressing concerns in relation to, will I get paid, and what happens to my health insurance. So yesterday we had an employee that showed up, and Dr. Southwick had a conversation with the employee and the employee's spouse, and the employee's spouse has a very significant health issue. And so they were worried, will I have health insurance July 1st? So we're receiving far more concern or question right now from our employees than we are from patrons. Those questions from patrons are really what's going to happen and what's next and what's the resolution. And as we've stated a lot today, there are a lot of answers that we simply don't have at this point in time. Representative Bollier?
Are you and/or other superintendents or the superintendent's organization of the state in conversation with Senate President Wagle and Speaker of the House Merrick?
I am not aware that the Johnson County superintendents are either. In relation to the statewide organization, I don't know the answer to that question. If those conversations are occurring, I'm not a part of those conversations.
Since they control all of this.
An assumption is that the Kansas Association of School Boards and our Commissioner of Education and the State Board of Education might be having those conversations, but I'm not involved in those conversations if they are occurring. Jay?
The governor yesterday sent out a statement saying that he and the Attorney General would respond aggressively to ensure that schools stayed open. He just said that, we think we're going to figure this out. I just want to make sure, in your estimation, it is the legislature's duty to come up with a solution, not the court's duty not to follow through on closing schools as it is promised.
So here's some sound bites for you. Are you ready? I'm going to answer Jay's question. There are a lot of different individuals and parties that are at fault here. The most difficult thing we can do is continue to paint each other in a corner. No one wins when that occurs. No one wins when that occurs. My hope was that the court would have said, adequacy is a bigger issue. We're going to take up equity and adequacy together in relation to a new school finance formula. We're going to maintain jurisdiction of the case, but we're going to combine those two and take it up together with these mandates as we move forward. Obviously, that did not occur. So in relation to the individuals that can make the decisions, we have a governor that has tremendous responsibility, the governor's involvement with the AG and direction there, the Attorney General, but the courts have a role in this as well. And so the courts have issued a statement in relation to their opinion. Depending on what happens the next couple of weeks, they may issue an order. What that order would look like, we don't know. Again, that order, if it occurs, I'm not sure what that looks like because of the federal requirements on us as well. So it's also intricately involved. But the occurrences of painting each other in a corner to have winners and losers, that's politics from all sides, and it really needs to end. It's our kids that are in the middle of this, and that's wrong. If we want to fight it out as adults in a separate venue, we can do that, but our kids are in the middle, and that's wrong.
Dr. Hinson, though, it's clear that the legislature, and I think the lawmakers in here would agree, is the ones that have to craft the solution that satisfies the Supreme Court. Right now, it doesn't look like the governor is going to call a special session. There was nothing in the statement that Jay alluded to. He just said there was going to be an aggressive reaction to whatever the court does. There's been lawmakers who have said, you know what, let's let them shut it down. So with that in mind, it still seems to me difficult to say that you expect a solution is going to be able to come and you're going to be able to operate past July 1st with perhaps no state money.
So do you want the solution?
I do.
Okay.
I think everybody in here does.
I think the general interpretation of the court's opinion is that they would be temporarily satisfied if the previous provision of 81.2 for LOB, if we continued in that mechanism until we figured out what we were going to do next. If that is the court's remedy, the court didn't provide the remedy, but if that's the court's remedy, then I'm going to go back to what we live in as adults. We all have to do things we don't necessarily like, but we have to do. So as respectful as I can say this, the legislature is now in a corner, the governor is in a corner, and if that's the court remedy, fund the 81.2. It's not beneficial for Shawnee Mission. It is a shifting of the tax burden, that's it. It isn't more money for education. But swallow hard, develop this short-term solution, satisfy what we think will satisfy the court, and then work on a very transparent plan to create a new school finance formula. I believe that would solve the issue temporarily. Maybe I'm entirely wrong, but that's my belief. So I understand the mindset of, well, we don't want the court telling us what to do. Again, I'm going to go back to, we're adults, we all have to do things we don't want to do. But if it solves the issue on a temporary basis, we just need to solve the issue on a temporary basis and then work on that long-term solution. And if that happens over the next couple of weeks, we won't be having these conversations. I don't know about you, but I would kind of like not to be having these conversations. Can I answer anything else for you, what we do and what we don't know? Great, appreciate you being here. If you want to talk to me afterward, happy to do that as well. Have a great day, thanks.